Greetings. I am Tom Earl. Welcome to the celebration. We are grateful that you have intentionally chosen to spend this time with us. Let us start with this reminder. You are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated exactly as you are. Welcome to episode 3 with Walter Wally B. Jennings. Wally, thank you for being here for episode 3. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, Tom. Thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Anything you want to share with the folks while the camera's on?
Not at all, man. Thank you all for tuning in. Hopefully, you all will get a lot out of our conversations together. And even if you don't, I get to talk to my good friend Tom Earl in front of y'all. So hopefully, you all get something from it because I know I certainly am.
Boom. Okay, let's go camera off on that one. That you just kind of summed up my intention with the podcast. I was like, you know what? I've been putting out this thing for 2016. Who knows if anybody's listening? I intentionally don't look at the stats. So I was like, let me start recording these, for me. So getting together with you and talking through these things, this is exactly what I'd want to do, even if we didn't have the record button on. So I resonate with that. So there's a couple more things that I have on wanted to ask you about fatherhood. One thing I wanted to ask, so when you're in your invitation, you talked about give yourself grace, embrace the season you're in. What is the season you're in? Are you willing to yield to the season? And then you used a phrase to me that had I wanted you to unpack a little. You said, don't be enslaved to what you think you should be doing or what your life should look like. Do you want to kind of like unpack that a little bit?
Sure. So I will share some information about myself. So I am 46 years old. And so I believe I am in the heart of when people normally have a midlife crisis. And Bishop T.D. Jakes, man, he hit the nail on the head in one of his sermons. He deciphered and he talked about what it's like to be in this place. And it is this space in life, right? Where you're looking at where you are from the lens of where you thought you would be, what you have through the lens of what you thought you would have. You've got years in front of you that you're not really sure about, but they're the years that now other people will consider you old. You got these years behind you that would be considered your younger years, and you're looking back on them often with all the things and regrets of that you should have done, the opportunities you didn't maximize, the things you didn't do. You've got, if you have a family, you've got your family is getting older. You've got, and that's not just the family that you have. If you're a husband, for example, you're talking about your children getting older, your relationship with your wife, your body's changing. If you have a foundational family, you sometimes your parents are getting older and dealing with that. And so you got this whole amalgam of different things where life is just overwhelming in every sense of the word. And when I think about it, right, as I was just talking through it, it sounds to me, if you're an educator, it sounds like what you see seventh graders go through. I am not a full-time teacher, but my wife is a lifelong educator, and I have had a chance to do some extensive work with working with young people in schools. And I would argue that the most formidable, challenging year of grade school is seventh grade, because they're going through so much physically, emotionally, psychological, like there's just so much happening, right, for them. And so that is what a midlife crisis kind of feels like. And I share that because when you're in this place of trying to really hone in on the season you're in and honoring what it is that it's requiring of you, there is a silencing, there is a willingness to ignore a lot of those other things that I mentioned, where you really have to, where if you're gonna honor the season, and if you're gonna give it what it's requiring of you, you got to really shut out what you didn't do in the past, however many years before that you were living. You've got to not be so, you can't let anxiety creep in about what lies ahead. You got to really take inventory again on where you are in that moment, and learning how to adopt an attitude of gratitude, of gratefulness, of thankfulness, right? Of wherever you are in life, being thankful and grateful for that season. You know, to take an old expression, like counting your blessings one by one, and being able to really stand on that. And that is what I found gives us the fortitude to really be able to honor the place that we're in life at that time.
Well, I am glad I asked that question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I was saying, of like a lot of the time I spent this past year was grieving the life I thought I was going to have, and that accepting the life, like kind of what you're saying, like letting that go really is a kind of a death. Because especially I think if you're a visionary, or somebody who's been working towards something for a very long time, or it really was like I intentionally was like, okay, I thought this, I thought this, I thought this, I've always wanted this, it's no longer going to happen. And it was like it was a mourning, it was a letting it go of seeing this is, and I hear a lot of parents talk about this, of like, you thought your child would be this, or you thought they'd go through this, and kind of letting go of that. And I was doing it for my own life. So I think what you're describing is what I've been going through this year.
And it's not easy. It's not easy. It's hard. It's and to be perfectly honest and forthright, like, I'm also dealing with aging parents, and I never expected, I never could have imagined that, you know, the people who took care of me, you know, the people who seem larger than life, seem invincible, indestructible. You know, we talked about faith a few episodes before, right? And man, what do? Like, your faith is shaken when the people that are essentially, some of them are responsible for the faith that you have, you know, that, you know, it's like, this person was instrumental in what I believe, when they're in a different season in life, when they are challenged in certain areas. I mean, it can rock you to the core, like, to see them walk through certain things. But, you know, in those moments, I found that, again, you have to, first of all, recognize that your parents aren't just your parents. My parents aren't just my parents. You know, they're individuals. They are, you know, they're subject to life just like anybody else. But also, too, my parents are they're also vessels, meaning that I am where I am in life partially because of what they taught me, but I also can't allow, because of what I see going on with them, to shake what they've invested in me and what I've learned. Because what that means, if I do that, if my spiritual well-being, if what I believe is predicated on their condition, then I have made them my God. I've made them my source. And so I have to be careful that I don't allow myself to abandon what it is that they've sown into me, simply because, again, those individuals as vessels, because I see some things happening and going on with them.
Do you mind elaborating what you meant, them becoming your God? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So they're So there are certain individuals who, when their parents are the ones that have, introduced them to their spirituality, took them to church, or, shared with them who God was, it can it can be easy to deify individuals, where it's like, no, they're not a deity, they're a vessel. They're the person that introduced you. We see it a lot in Christianity, where these individuals that we read about in the Bible, and you get churches and streets named after them, Saint so and so, Apostle so and so, this person's got their name on this or that, where it's almost like idolatry in a way, even though we may not necessarily mean it. But again, when our focus, when our worship, when our well-being, when the basis of what we believe and our ability to be able to stay rooted in it becomes shaken by the status of these individuals and some of the things that they may walk through, then it's a telltale sign that we may have misplaced our belief in the individual rather than the entity or the higher power that we say we believe in.
So it's kind of like in movements or celebrities or our parents, when we put people like on a pedestal, and kind of like our values, our beliefs, these things that are really hard to believe in, we kind of like tie it to them. And then when we realize, oh, they are, what is it? Is it infallible? They are fallible. They are like, they're not perfect. No one's perfect. If you've wrapped up the movement or your belief or something in them as this symbol, that when that shakes, the thing that you have attached to them can be shaken too. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely. And so we just have to be very careful of that. We have to be very careful of that. And you hit the nail on the head, even when it comes to celebrities, and the worship we can often have in that way.
Yeah. And I think it ties back to our dreams too. I think sometimes our like visions and our dreams can become that as well. And then when it's like, it doesn't happen, it's like, well, I've wanted this my whole life. I've been working towards this my whole life. I had the patience, but I always assumed sometime in my life it would happen. And then when it's like, it's not, that I think that can also be that similar of like, well, it's what I've been striving for. If it's not, then what's the point of any of this? I think that can be a trigger for that as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I learned in regard to that is that sometimes it doesn't look like what we thought it would look like, but that doesn't mean it wasn't successful. We will often define failure by the product rather than the process. Sometimes the success is the process and what is born out of the journey that you went on. Whereas it's like we're looking at the end of this process, and it's like, this isn't where I thought I would be. This isn't what I thought would come out of this. Does that mean it was actually a failure? And so, we live in a world and a time where people will tell you that, hey, if you didn't accomplish what it is that you set out to accomplish, you failed, period. And that closes the door on being able, again, to really take proper inventory on the things that were accomplished, the things that were done, which when you do that, sometimes you can see that, hey, what I accomplished was bigger than what I set out to do. What I actually did was, magnanimous compared to what I actually wanted to do.
That right there, that was what you just named about the process, has been one of my biggest lessons learned over this past year, going through this grieving, is that how you do something matters more than what you accomplish. And I really saw it, especially being in marketing, and then especially getting to work with people who are exponentially more successful than I am, and seeing like, okay, so there are times where you sometimes find yourself when you're using marketing or trying to build a movement or a message where things can get a little murky. And when you're like, yes, but the mission is sound, or the mission is so important, or what we're trying to get to, that like it can become so easy without realizing it that you're stepping into ends justify the means tactics. And that I have just seen from especially seeing people accomplish, like, wow, look what they've accomplished, all this good, from nonprofits to thought leaders to entrepreneurs, where I just see, yes, sure, the end result looks like it's world saving, but you just see the like trail of hurt and disregard and pain that was left in the wake, that to me I've realized is not worth it. And I think it's one of the big lies of capitalism that we really have to come to terms with, especially around, global warming and systemic discrimination, that there really isn't going to be this innovation or technology that's going to be birthed that's going to save us. Because when you look at, in this capitalist system, the way that technology gets birthed, or the movement gets birthed to become so big that it's in your face, that there ends up just having to be so many ends justify the means decisions that have to take place to beat out the competition, that it's flawed in and of itself. It becomes flawed, and it's really hard to do in our culture, in the way it's become systemically set up, to try to honor it's, if I have to step into ends justify the means, it's not worth it. And can become very hard to get back on the path when you create success through ends justify the means, because you kind of have to keep it going. And very quickly it becomes, okay, if you're using the same tactics as this person that we can clearly see as destructive, what's the difference between you using these tactics and them? And it's like, well, my mission, what I'm doing, is for the betterment of everyone. It's like, but that is exactly what they're saying. That's exactly what every dictator and fascist says. So it's really difficult, but it's one of the things that I've been continually trying to bring back to my mind, is the process is it. The process is it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Absolutely.
Well, I have lots of more things on my mind about fatherhood, lots of things that we've talked about already. Just want to check in again. Is there something else on your heart or mind that you wanted to either say as a statement, or as a question, or as a throwing into the space?
No, not me. Not on the top of my head. I'm just really enjoying the discussion, and being able to hear where you are as well has been a real, like I said, it's been a real treat and enlightenment. It's funny because I enjoy these annual conversations that we have where we kind of catch up, and so it's funny because it's like one of those conversations where the whole world gets to hear.
Exactly. Okay, here's one for you. This is something I've been reflecting on. I have noticed that, going back to our first conversation where we were talking about just seems like Pandora's box, inexhaustible disregard for Black life that systemically permeates everything in this world, that when you acknowledge that exists, and then you love someone as deeply as your child, that it's like this, it's a vulnerability that I haven't ever experienced in a relationship before. I'm gonna awkwardly try to phrase this, of knowing how hurt you could get by allowing your heart to love that openly and that big to someone that is going off into the world, that it seems like everything in the society is set up to try to squash the light that you're cultivating. And it's like this wanting to protect, but also wanting them to be open, and then also trying to like do that for yourself of like, am I kind of like awkwardly describing this kind of like, it's like there's like a pain in the love because of that, the bias and discrimination and hate directed at them. Is this kind of making sense when I'm trying to awkwardly
I think
vocalize?
yeah, no, I think so. I know that for me, I never wanted to be like the helicopter parent, the overly protective father of the daughter. I never wanted to be that person, because again, I believe that when you keep your child from experiencing things, then you don't allow them to experience life. So you have to be careful of guarding them against everything. If you guard them against everything, then they experience nothing. And so and especially as a Black woman who is, a double minority in that regard. And as I mentioned before, my daughter's 20. And what I found is that I've got this concern for her navigating the world as a young Black woman, from a state that is the third highest for human trafficking, living in a city that is the third highest in the state for human and sex trafficking. It's something that definitely stays on my mind when again the individuals that are directly impacted by human trafficking are individuals from communities that are underrepresented and marginalized, and a lot of the resources and the attention that is garnered towards those things are lacking because of the individuals that again are directly impacted by it, by who are the victims that are involved in those particular things. So so you got this conundrum that I believe again you're referring to of, I want her to live life to the fullest. I don't want to again be this parent that is, where are you? What are you doing? You need to check in, and kind of micromanaging her life. But I also want her to be aware and to be cognizant of some of the dangers of life, and making sure that again she's mindful of the individuals that she's around, that she's aware of where she's going, and that she knows that she needs to check in, not because again we're trying to manage your life, but because we want to make sure that you're doing okay. And that's one of the things that when I get a chance to see her and when we get together, I always share with her that, honey, just so you know, I just know I just want you to be okay. Just know that everything, I just want you to be all right. So I need you to make decisions that are going to help facilitate you being okay. So yeah, if I understood your comment correctly, that kind of conundrum is pretty challenging.
Yeah, and you nailed the first part of it. And I think the other part that's like hard to name because it feels so selfish is just like the love that she deserves, that I think is her birthright from me, is just this like open, unguarded love that every day I'm trying to step more and more into. And I'm past the point of no return, but like I'm going even deeper, but it just is like this knowing of like, I am so deep in this love for this person that if something were to happen to them, I don't know if I'd survive that.
Mm.
And the chances of that happening, even if they were just a young person, right? They were, let's say, if she was white, but then it becomes exponentially more possible that something could happen. It just, there's like this pull then to be like, okay, so then you need to be a little more guarded. Do you know what I mean? Like in my heart, I need to protect my heart because it's like it's dangerous how much you love this person, because if something did happen, I'd be done. Do you know what am I kind of?
Yeah, I know for me in walking through that, part of it is, and we talked about this in the last episode, this is where that self-care and that self-advocacy comes in, where you have to make sure that you're again modeling looking out, making sure you're in a good healthy space as well.
Mm.
So, obviously, the love and support and protection of your child, of course, is preeminent. And if anything were to happen to them, you of course would be devastated, and as you should be. But, the whole premise that our well-being has to be explicitly tied to the well-being of our child, I think we have to be very careful of that. And so for me, as a matter of fact, I told my children, I said that I had to decide a long time ago that I couldn't allow my well-being to hinge on your decisions. I can't do it. As an individual based on my personality type, the fact that I'm an empath, like I cannot allow my well-being to depend on your decisions. And that has to also extend over to, if something were to happen to them beyond my control, beyond their control, but again, obviously, again, if something were to happen, it would be devastating. But, modeling what it looks like as far as to be able again to move on, in a way that is going to be, true to life. I have the privilege in my work of working with individuals who have had children pass away, and them create foundations and scholarships and legacies in the memories of those individuals, and and doing great work and being able to extend that legacy to be a blessing to someone else. So, I think that, again, we have to guard our hearts in that way. Not that we're holding back. We don't hold back, but what we do want to make sure that we have is that we set some time and things apart for ourselves, so that we don't become so engulfed in the well-being of our children that that if something were to happen to them, that would totally destroy and be completely catastrophic to our well-being moving forward.
Ooh, that was helpful. That was really helpful. I'm glad I asked. I was like, it took a lot of courage to even try to say that out loud. So I really appreciate you, Wally, for meeting me there.
No, I appreciate you bringing that up. And again, as a young father, or as a young father and as the father of a young child, I think it's important for you to have that in your mind as you're rearing her, as you're coming up with her, so that as those breaks come where you're releasing, you can release with a full heart, where you can release her into her seasons of embracing what the season is requiring of her. Because sometimes we as parents can hold our children back inadvertently, sometimes on purpose, but sometimes inadvertently, because we're holding them in this space of how we think they should be, or holding them in the snapshot of the child that they were. I tell my children too that you will always be my child, but you are not a child. So you'll always be my child, but I understand, and I have to recognize that you will not always be a child. My oldest is a woman. My youngest now is a young lady. So, there are some things that come along with saying that, with embracing that. And it's not easy. It is not easy, but that doesn't make it any less true. And again, that doesn't mean that I am recused from the work of releasing them into their necks also.
I like that. It's not easy, but it doesn't make it not true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. What a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The power of that's kind of what I found this year, like finding words to say out loud your pain to someone else is spiritual. It's kind of a form of creativity or creation. You know what I mean? Like it seems to be like where we say God's work or the expanding of the universe, whatever it is. There seems to be some sort of connection to saying out loud the pain. And I think one of the fears that I experience when you say the pain out loud is being okay with being misunderstood when you give it your first go at trying to speak out loud the pain.
Yeah, it's when we can. That is why this whole notion of I don't subscribe. Let me back up. I don't subscribe to the notion of safe spaces, because what you deem as safe may not be safe to someone else. So what I subscribe to is the notion of brave growing spaces. And I bring that up because when we can help it, that's why we have to be careful and mindful of our words. We have to be careful of, what we share, and be prudent, and remain gracious, but remain prudent in what we say and when. Not that we're fearful, not that we hold our tongue, but more than anything, we make sure that we undergird our mind in a way to where we're able to really take inventory of, does this need to be said now in this way? But understanding and knowing that it has to be said. The question becomes is this a space for me to be able to say it?
I'm going to write that down. I'd love for us on the final episode to talk about that right there. Okay. Well, as we draw to a close on episode 3, how can the good folks out there connect with you and get even more of Wally B in their life?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can visit me at WalterWallyBJennings.com. You can also find me at Walter Wally B Jennings on Facebook and at Wally B Jennings on Instagram.
And why don't you plug the Black Cemetery Network and Chosen Life Specialists as well?
Absolutely. So if you're interested in hearing more about the Black Cemetery Network, helping to uncover and to share the stories and the legacy of Black and African American cemeteries all around the nation, you can visit us at blackcemeterynetwork.org. And also, again, my gracious wife and I, we are the proud practitioners and owners of Chosen Life Specialists. Visit us at chosenlifespecialists.com, where we have been challenged to change individual and relationship culture.
And we do have an episode with Wally and your partner together. So check that out as well if you want to get a little insight of what that dynamic partnership can look like and bringing that into your life with your coaching program.
I forgot about that. Wow, I forgot.
I did too.
Tom be looking out, boy. I tell you. Tom be looking out.
Okay, as for me, so I do have a program called the Direct Connect Method Membership, and we really focus on exactly what we talked about, process-oriented creativity through journaling. You do not have to have any experience at all with writing or journaling or creativity. We really try to create experiences where you can feel what it's like to be in that flow, so you can name it, be aware of the things you did with your mind and body to get yourself there, so you can replicate it and really make that something that you can tap into more and more. So if you want to come join us for a pop-up workshop, tomearl.me/DCM invite. Wally, what is your invitation? What would you like to invite people to do, to be, to consider, to think about, to tap into? What's your invitation?
I would like to invite anyone listening to embrace what you believe and who you are allowing your well-being to be tethered to. What are the things that are impacting you? We talk about the things that drive us, but what are the things that are intrinsically tied to your physical, mental, and emotional well-being? And what are you doing to address your relationship with them? Because you should be controlling, you should always be in control of your seeking to gain control and become stronger in your mental, emotional, and physical. And so I would invite you again to investigate that, whether it's an individual, whether it is a habit, whatever it is. Being mindful of those things and those people is, I think, is so important in us being able to live the life that we really live, a full, productive life.
What a great invitation. I feel like I should just ask, what's your invitation? Just keep asking that over and over again for 30 minutes. My invitation is to, I think, one of the really destructive mental models that we have been socialized into buying into is viewing so many things as binaries. So one of the binaries that I have found in my life is, one of my favorite things is when something's my fault. Because if it's my fault, well, I can do something about it immediately. So I'm really into things being my fault. But what I have found is that is a binary, because if it's not my fault, then whose fault is it? Your fault. So it starts to get into this game a little bit of, it's either my fault or your fault, when that's a binary. And so it's always a spectrum. There's always a dance. So kind of looking through in your minds, what mental models have you created that are based upon binaries, this or that, and start to massage and invite in that there are no binaries. All right, Wally, episode 3 down in the books.
Outstanding. This is great, man.
I appreciate that. Looking forward to the final episode next week. We appreciate you as always. Wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.